Welcome to Evolve to Succeed, the podcast that brings together entrepreneurs, founders, business leaders and experts to talk about their journeys and explore the link between personal and business success. I'm your host, Warren Munson, founder of Evolve, a coaching, training and development company focused on enabling business and personal success and creating a community of like-minded individuals. Whether that be through our peer groups, one-to-one coaching, our training and development programs for you and your teams, or through our content and events, our mission is to get the best out of each individual and inspire them to be better both in life and in business. If you want to learn more about Evolve, including our beautiful co-working space in Ashley Cross in Poole, then please go to evolvemembers.com, where you'll find great content, insights, details of all of our services, and also information on our forthcoming events. For now though, let's get on with the show. Hello and welcome to this week's episode featuring Debbie Cohen, owner and founder of Streetwise HR. I've known Debbie for a long time and consider her somewhat of a guru on all things human resources. I was therefore eager to get her insights into a number of subjects that are at the heart of any business owner right now, including the future of the workplace, company values, staff retention, escalating costs and salaries, and so much more. We also have a great and honest conversation with Debbie about why and how she started Streetwise in 2012, how the experience has changed her, the relationships that she has built, and the important role her mentor played in her self-belief and subsequent success. With all that is going on in the world right now and the uncertainty of 2023 looming on the horizon, I thought it'd be really good to get that informed and expert insight, as I say, on all things people, and I really hope you do enjoy the conversation that results. Welcome, Debbie, to the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. It's lovely to be here.
It's great to have you on the show, and it's going to be great to talk to you about all things human resources, team engagement, all of those kind of things. Your kind of background and your knowledge and expertise is going to be quizzed during the course of this conversation, I'm sure. But we should start with a little bit about your background, the background of your business, Streetwise. So you founded the business in 2012. Tell us a little bit about how the business came about and a little bit about the journey since then, Debbie.
Okay, so yeah, Streetwise HR was founded in June 2012. I'd previously had an HR consultancy prior to Streetwise HR, and that had been going for 4 or 5 years, and I'd worked with the original founder of that consultancy, and that's where I really dipped my toe into HR consultancy, coming from quite a corporate background. You know, okay. I'd worked in education and I'd worked at JP Morgan in Liverpool, Victoria.
So you'd done it in-house?
I'd done it in-house for probably nearly 15 years before I went into consultancy.
Okay.
And at the point that I went into consultancy and joined the previous consultancy, I had just got disheartened really with HR and the perception of HR, and predominantly the politics and the bureaucracy, and I was burnt out, if I'm honest, really, with HR. And I had the opportunity to go into consultancy, joined a consultancy with the founder of that previous business, and I worked in there for 4 and 5 years and became a partner of that consultancy. And really, we rode the wave in 2008 of the recession, and we did really well. And then really what happened is she decided, understandably for her, that she wanted to go and get a job.
Okay.
It wasn't for me.
Right, you weren't going to go back into that corporate world.
No, and I didn't want to go back into that old style HR structure. For me, I'd seen what consultancy could do, and I had such a passion for consultancy and HR and how it could be done, that I wasn't ready to give up at that stage. So however scary that might have been at that time, I said, well, I want to carry on. And I didn't want to carry on under the old banner because it felt wrong, because it wasn't, I hadn't created it fully. I had been a part of that journey, but it wasn't mine. So I made that decision back in 2012 to start over. Kind of me at home, I just had a divorce. I was going through a breakup. I had no income coming in at that time, and it was just, how am I going to do this? And I thought, well, I'm going to do it. I don't care what's going to happen.
That drive was just in you to make it happen.
Absolutely. And I wasn't going to give up. I felt I still had so much more to give, and I was petrified.
We all are, aren't we? Those early days, we set up a business. Particularly, I think, the services industry, for mine, a business tax advisory, corporate finance, yours HR, we both set up with just us, probably a laptop, a phone, and a desk somewhere. And it's quite easy to get going, isn't it? Because you just provide services, clients pay, but there's this petrifying feeling of actually, will people buy me? It's just me now.
Yeah.
There's no other brand around me. It's me, and I can empathise with that petrified feeling, Debbie.
Yeah, and I think because I'd been part of something else that was known locally, and although it ended for whatever reason, we both decided we wanted to do it differently. There was a sense of feeling or bad feeling I felt in the local community. So I kind of went and hid a little bit, which probably wasn't sensible for the first few years, and I kind of just needed to lick my wounds. And I went into this. I've just got to survive, and the first 2 years was quite hard going, and I had my confidence had kind of taken a real knock. But you do what you've got to do, don't you? And I believed in Streetwise HR. I set Streetwise HR up because I really wanted to be able to give local employers, especially entrepreneurial businesses, that straight talking commercial advice and guidance. And I think that was my passion and my dream.
So when did the turning point come then? You talk about those first couple of years being quite tough, and when did the point come where that self-belief possibly kicked in and that confidence that you could really make something happen?
I have to say, if I'm really honest, I don't think that the confidence really came until the last few years. I actually don't think I've really been true to myself until the last 2 to 3 years. Maybe the pandemic has had an impact on that. But I think where I started to think, I've just got to get on with this. I can't keep staying in my back room and not going networking anymore, and not meeting the people that I used to meet, or not telling the people close to me how I felt or what had happened. I'd kept everything quite close to my chest about why the business failed or what we had done, and I wouldn't change any of it for the world. It's made me who I am today, and I'm thankful for that experience. But obviously I'm still, even today, I'm left with some of the reminiscence of that, in terms of, debt and all of that kind of stuff. So it's still with me, but I take that as that's my strength to make sure that I can keep powering on. But I think what actually changed is I was really lucky to stay in contact with Laura McHarry. She was working, I think, for Set for Growth maybe back then. And she invited me in for a meeting, and I think you meant to have like an hour's slot. And about 3 hours later, I was still in this meeting with her. The poor woman had my life story, and she had known me in the previous business. And I think just having somebody to talk to and actually share that story was the turning point from that point of view. Because she said, get out. Start meeting people again. Go and speak to people that you haven't spoken to for however many years, and stop hiding.
Wow, we all need that. I had Mike, didn't I? As you know, I had Mike Bevis, and you've had Laura, and you do need those people around you, those mentors, don't you? Definitely. Those sounding boards that really have no agenda other than at times a belief in you, and somebody that's prepared to say the tough things.
Absolutely. And I think if it hadn't have been for that, she set me some quite clear goals from that meeting. And one of those was to reach out to people that I hadn't spoken to. I think you were one of the people on the list actually at the time. And, other people, there was, Graham Stewart from Britannia Parking. There were some other people that had really good connections locally. And she said, why aren't you speaking to all these amazing people that you already have connections with? And start getting out there and having the conversations and showing them what you're all about, because they already know that you can deliver from an HR perspective. You just need to go out there and grab it again. And that gave me the kind of kick I needed, I think, to just take that next step.
And what's really interesting about your business, which I think is amazing, is that you recently did have your 10th anniversary party. Lucky enough to be there. And what struck me was that many of your clients had been with you for at least 10 years, but 8+ was really common, and I always talk about this kind of term, client delight, and what struck me in that kind of evening was that you really had nailed that client delight, that philosophy. So why do you think your clients have stayed with you so long?
Oof, that's a good question. I think that we've created a very strong relationship. So I think of the core clients that we've remained working with, and a handful of those clients were clients prior to Streetwise HR becoming, being born. Britannia Parking, one of them, Urban Guild, one of them, For Solutions. You've got some really key local businesses that have stayed with me 13, 14 years, and I think if I asked them the question, they'd probably say, we just can't get rid of you, Debbie. In fact, I think they've already said that to me many times. But I think the trust and I think the mutual respect between us is key. They know that they can call on me whenever and get sound advice, but I think also they know that I won't tell them always what they want to hear. I'll tell them what I think is best for them and their business. Yeah. And they need sometimes that confidant. I think entrepreneurs especially can be quite strong-minded. Yeah. And some people in HR can be a bit fearful of standing their ground on certain things and giving their own perspective. It's not our job necessarily as HR professionals to say, this is what you should do. But I think entrepreneurs like to be given options, and they like to be able to talk things through without somebody judging them.
That constructive challenge is quite an important thing, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. And I think we've built some strong foundations, and I've been very lucky to have built my relationships with key individuals over the years, like yourself, like Brian Parker, like Ross Negus, who have developed their businesses over that 10+ year period, and I've grown with them. Yeah. And now they're at a stage in their business where they're kind of starting to, be less involved. Look at Mark Cribb, he's been less involved, but they'll still pick up the phone to me, and we'll still always have that connection. And I would like to consider them all, as I think I said in my speech at the party, they're now friends, and we've built that relationship. And
proper deep-seated
absolutely,
relationship.
and that's, I'm proud of that, and I'm proud to be able to look at our retention, and I've built a team with Kim and Katie especially who get it, and they understand the value of relationship building. It's not just let's get a sale, it's let's build and connect to who we're working with.
Definitely. I've always said it's the in any client relationship when you're providing services, it's not the pound you can earn today, it's the value of that relationship over the lifetime. And the longevity of it that's really important, isn't it?
It's vital, and I think, unfortunately, some businesses don't see that. Yeah. They go after that initial kind of, well, just want a sale, and I think it's so much deeper than that. And we've built relationships, haven't we, and friendships over the years with the people that we've networked with, and that hasn't been because we're going out there to try and get business. It's been because we actually care about each other, and therefore we care about what happens to their business, and therefore if they then need some support, we're at the end of a phone.
It's that longevity, isn't it? It's about being in a business community for life, not just for that quick kind of relationship, and as I say, that quick pound. I mean, but because of that nuance, and because you are entrepreneurially minded yourself, Debbie, that I can see and have felt myself that there's that correlation, that kind of bond. Does that sometimes, as an HR consultant, advising those businesses, put you in a strange place? Because you can be constructively challenging, but you've also got to be able to see what's going on within their teams and from an employee's perspective. Is that a challenge in your role, or do you think it's a skill you've just developed over the years?
Definitely a skill I've developed over the years, and I think...
Because if you don't have the perspective, you can't give the advice, can you?
No, and I do think it's a really hard one to explain, but I think as a HR professional, you can train for years and learn and go into your CIPD, and you can get really experienced in the practice and the legislation and what what you're meant to say and how you're meant to say it. but there's an inner thing that happens for me when I'm speaking to a client and I'm advising, and whether that's that passion or that, you know, that feeling of I care so much about their businesses, maybe sometimes too much. It's instinct. I feel that I'm able to have a conversation and advise a client and be able to interpret things in a certain way that I can relay something to a client, whether that's something they want to hear or they don't want to hear. Yeah. And I think you have to be able to also manoeuvre yourself through the teams, build trust with team members without that conflict, and that can be quite a challenge when you're seen as the person that has the relationship with the business owner. People don't automatically want to open up to you because they think that you're just going to go running off to the business owner and tell them what they've told you. So you have to be, you have to be able to navigate that, and you have to be able to build trust throughout a team. But also, ultimately, you are, as an HR professional that works with business owners, you also have to be able to support and help and guide them in their business decisions. And I think coming from a business entrepreneurial background myself, I'm able to give both perspectives.
The nuance of it and the commerciality of it definitely makes a big difference.
Does help. But I do think it's always been a challenge from an HR consultancy point of view that, we don't make a secret that we are pro-employer. That is what we do. We work with employers and we work with business owners to help them grow their businesses, and therefore there are times when we will need to speak to them about, well, what do they need to do and how do they need to do it and what's the strategy behind it. So there can be a conflict there sometimes, I think. How you present yourself.
And I suppose before we start talking about some of the things that are happening in the world of HR at the moment, what are the benefits do you believe in working, with an entrepreneurial business, working with an outsourced HR consultancy rather than having that role in-house?
I mean, there are quite a few benefits. There are also, trying to balance it out, there can be some disadvantages occasionally as well, if I'm being really honest. But I think the main benefits, are it can be a real challenge for a business, and especially an entrepreneurial business, where you might have an internal HR person that has, I would say, limited experience because they've maybe in one role or two roles and haven't really got the broad depth of experience right up to sort of director level. And therefore there'll be things that they come across that they may not be able to give the full experience and advice and guidance to the business as maybe an outsourced HR team can, where they've got such a broad, wide-ranging experience and specialisms that they can bring to the table. But I think the other thing from an outsourced point of view is we're not in the business, so we are able to really look at the business and advise and help steer that business owner without feeling that, well, actually, that's going to impact me. Well, I'm not an employee. I'm a consultant, so I'm able to give a very, bird's eye view of actually, what needs to happen.
That objective objective view, as it were.
Yeah, and it can be really emotional for a business owner to make decisions about their business when they're looking at their people. I feel it in my business. So when you're an internal HR person, it's extremely lonely at times when you are stuck between the leaders of the business and the colleagues, and you either become friends with everybody because you don't want to be on your own, and then you're conflicted because how do you advise the business fully if you're worried about how that impacts you and your friends, and it's quite isolating. So where do you go? So if you're not friends, then you've got nobody to go to unless you can build that relationship with the business owners. Sometimes that's not overly possible. No. So I think we can be less emotionally attached. I mean, it makes us sound like we don't care, but we absolutely do care.
Yeah.
But it's much easier to listen to a client and for them to say what they really think to somebody that isn't
external to the organisation. So I get that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for us to be able to not worry about saying things and then think, well, I've got to go and, I'm working in this business. You can be so much more objective.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think it helps the employees having an external person that, they don't know, or, can come in and be a bit more, sometimes provide a bit more tough love sometimes. And I'm not saying that, we would ever do things that were, unethical or not legal or anything like that, but sometimes you've got to be able to have the right conversations and say things that the individual internally might struggle to say, or have the skill set to say it. Whereas we can come in and be more empathetic and deal with a situation in a broader way.
Brilliant. Right. Well, we should thank you, Debbie. It's great to give our listeners a bit more of an insight into Streetwise, your story, your journey, your philosophies and your successes, which is brilliant. But we should probably go on to talk about the world of human resources and perhaps how that's changed in recent years, and possibly even changed the kind of work that you get involved in. Obviously, we've had the pandemic, we've had this shift to hybrid working, we've had the scarcity of resource and all of those kind of things. They all present challenges. I mean, what are the most common themes that you're facing now and the challenges that you're helping your clients overcome?
There are many. I think it would be remiss if I didn't say recruitment was probably at the top of that list. I think we all know that there is a challenge to recruit good caliber staff at the moment, and that is across the board. It's not an industry specific issue right now. I think we all went into the pandemic, and I believe we were already in a candidate driven market before we even went into the pandemic, and I think we all felt during the pandemic that we were going to come out of the pandemic and we would be in an employer driven market, because it kind of made sense. So many organisations
did make redundancies because they thought it would be easy to pick people up the other side, didn't they?
So I think we've all gone into a bit of a shock almost coming out of it,
but the reality,
and we're in a even more of a candidate driven market than we've ever been. But it's more than that. It's that candidates and employees' mindsets have shifted.
Okay.
So I don't think we can't just say we've got recruitment issues. We've got recruitment and retention issues. I think all employers need to really be mindful of retention as much as recruitment. And I think the things that we're seeing, as I said, are recruitment difficulties. Mental health in the workplace and sadly outside of the workplace has never been higher, in terms of people struggling with where are they at, how are they feeling, really struggling to cope with normal day life. And again, I think we were seeing signs of that before the pandemic. The pandemic has just really added to that, and I think it's not just the employees, it's employees and employers. They're both struggling with mental health. And so that's becoming quite a challenge, I think, for both sides.
Is that changing the skill sets that you need yourself and within your consultancy?
Well, we're all mental health practitioners, so we have gone through that training. I think you do need a specific skill set to be able to have the right conversations with the employer, but also help deal with cases that are coming up that are employee focused. And you've got to start to think about all of the implications of dealing with one case that can be similar to another case but have completely different things that need to take into consideration. And I think people don't think about the complexities of some of that when they're dealing with those kinds of situations. So we've definitely seen a massive increase in mental health cases, and also hybrid working. Challenges of employers coming into the pandemic. I think it had started again, but obviously the focus on home working was obviously huge, wasn't it, during the pandemic? And then coming out of it, a lot of companies went to home working, and we've done a lot of work on hybrid working, the culture, the engagement on remote working and how you keep that going, which is challenging.
Yeah, and that's probably something I wanted to discuss with you, because I know that kind of employee engagement, that culture piece is something that you do focus on when you work with clients, and I think that is a challenge, isn't it? When you've got staff working remotely, you've got some of the other challenges in life that are going on. You know, it's not an easy climate out there for anybody, is it? And other worries and concerns. So how would you, any tips for anybody listening that's an employer on how they can, you know, deal with the kind of culture employee engagement piece while some of these challenges are out there in the world and also through hybrid working?
It's a very big question, Warren. We could
question.
spend all day talking about that. I think you've got to look at each organisation individually, and I think things will be very specific to those organisations, depending what type of business they are. But I think one of the key things that employers need to really focusing on is, you know, what are their touch points with their staff? You know, how often do they speak to their employees, whether that's they're in an office or they're remote or they're hybrid? You know, what are those touch points? You know, do they have a, you know, weekly conversation with them? Do they do a group, you know, meeting, whether that's everybody online or in a huddle? You know, map out how many times that they actually speak or have some contact with their staff. And that's not just from a line management point of view, that's from the leaders of the business point of view as well. Because I think lack of communication is fundamental with any business. And if you don't get those touch points right, that's where you'll start failing. Yeah. You know, you've got to be able to have a flow of communication upwards and downwards, and probably, you know, all sides, in all directions within an organisation.
And communication is one of those tough things, though, isn't it? Because whatever you do and however you think you're getting it right, there's always more you can do to improve. But I get that and understand that, because I think it's an interesting point. And as you said that, it made me think, you know, as business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, we're also more isolated, aren't we? So
more than we've ever been.
Yeah, so actually those touch points do become harder, and you probably used to get away with them being quite informal, but perhaps a more formal approach is needed now.
I think it's more just about stopping and just thinking about what they are, and what works for you and what works for your business. So what are the touch points with the employees, but also what are the touch points with your leaders? You know, how valuable are your management meetings or your board meetings or your SLTs? Do you get the right output? Do you talk about the right things as leaders? Do you focus on, you know, yes, of course you all need to focus on where are we on our budgets and where are we on my strategy and where are we, but where is the people focus in those leader meetings, and making sure that the right touch points are there to filter that down.
Then it cascades down. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and if it doesn't, because you don't have the structure in place, that's fine. But then who is going to filter it down? So how do the employees get to understand what they're a part of? Because being remote especially, you're going to miss out on so much, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely. So communication is clearly a big piece, and how that cascades, and how you know, include kind of that people person at a senior level and consider all the issues. But what about values, you know, and this piece around setting values, how values might have changed in an organisation in the last 3 years? What's any advice that you'd give on that?
I mean, I think values are vital to, you know, ensure that you can understand your culture within your business. But the biggest mistake a lot of employers make is that they spend a lot of money and time on developing values. You know, they'll bring in, you know, consultants, or, you know, they'll spend a lot of time on away days, you know, mapping out what their values are going to be, and they put them on a piece of paper, or I think we went to a talk and talked about vinyl values, where you know, you put them, you laminate them and they look great, and then you put them in a drawer and nobody discusses them, or nobody mentions them again. And for me, that's one of the worst things that you can do. Don't bother doing it. You know, if you're going to invest in understanding what your values are, you need to do that in line with looking at your culture and your environment, and ensuring that you understand that, well, what is that why? Because if you can understand the purpose and the values and what you're all about, you can communicate that and embed that into your business. And I think that doesn't only help with retention, it should help with recruitment, because one of the things that employers aren't doing, and they've started to be fair to some of them, is showcase themselves and show off their values and who they are and what they're about to attract the right candidates. Because I think some of them are still in the mindset of, well, if you want to work for me, then what can you provide? But it's got to be more of an even relationship now.
And it has been for a long time, isn't it? But that's probably, you're right, that's probably more of an onerous now, isn't it? Where, you know, individuals
More
want
so
to
than
go
ever.
to an organisation where there is a purpose, where they understand it, where there's alignment to their own values. And that's going to make recruitment in a difficult market easier.
Make it easier. And I think, you know, if you embed the values and people talk in every day about the values, you know, and you know, when they're doing reviews, or whether you're doing recruitment, or whether you're doing, you know, I don't know, discussions about clients, and you're using your values, and they become habitual, don't they? They become behaviours. And I think you can make people accountable against those values. And
that's the only way you get away, I think, from sort of, you know, the great term vinyl values, is that you do embed them in everything you do, your recruitment, your induction, your appraisal, you know, how you exit an employee if they're not performing, you know, it's still got to stand by all of those things, but it's not an easy thing to do, is it, Debbie?
It's really hard, and I think it's become even harder because of the market that we're in and the challenges that employers are facing. And I see that employers have become fearful of those, you know, we always talk about don't compromise, don't we? And I think we both absolutely agree on that. But I do think that although employers agree with that, they're too scared to act on it at the moment, because if they act on it, there's nobody else to fill it, because the market is so challenging. And I would say, well, it's better not to have somebody than to have the wrong person.
Absolutely. Well, I'm evidence of having brought the wrong people in at times, and thought that was the quick kind of route to success, and it derailed us for a number of years. And
I think the damage it does is sometimes unseen for a period of time, and then it becomes so toxic that it's how do you unpick it all? And it becomes so much more challenging to deal with, not just financially but emotionally for those businesses. And the impact it has on the rest of the team is significant.
And it's not until that individual or individuals are exited that you sometimes, as the owner and leader in an organisation, see the true extent of the damage, because you have been trying to be blinkered, because perhaps it's driving commercial results in the short term, but the long term damage can be detrimental, can't it?
Absolutely. And you know, things have got tougher. It's not just about, you know, the market. I think it's also about candidates and employees' needs and wants have become very set. You know, they're very clear now about what they will want and what they need. And so employers are wavering because their bargaining or negotiating power has probably been taken away from them a little bit. But I think they just need to stand strong. And, you know, they are hugely resilient. You know, business owners that we talk to on a daily basis are incredible and, you know, are so inspiring that they can be resilient and they can get through it. But they just need to have the right thought processes and people around them to help advise and guide them, so they don't feel alone and they feel that they can find a way through that maybe isn't the you know, the easy way or the clear way, but it takes some thought about, well, what are my options? You know, how could I do this differently without compromising?
It's that whole phrase, do what's right, not what's easy. And sometimes, but you know, it's going to be interesting, isn't it, as we roll forward and come out of whatever 2023 may bring, the other side, to see how that sets. And I am a believer, but maybe I'm an idealist, but I am a believer, and I'm passionate about those businesses that stand by their values and focus on their values in difficult times will come up the other side stronger and in a better place. It's so easy to make those compromises, those shortcuts, and actually what do you get left with at the other side? You might still be in business, but you know, those businesses, what you're actually left with, whereas those businesses that maybe need to end up hunkering down a bit but staying true to their values, come out ready to take the opportunities that will clearly present themselves the other side of a difficult economic patch.
Yeah, and it's about being brave and, putting your head above the parapet, isn't it? And, I remember in the last recession, somebody saying to me, the worst thing you can do is bury your head in the sand and, not push through and not make the tough decisions. And if you keep going and keep making those decisions and, take those risks, you will be successful, and because other people won't do it.
No,
so you need to keep going.
Yeah.
You need to keep doing it. And I think that's the message that we all need right now, and we all need to support and help each other, is we've all got to continue to find that resilience that, we've had to find over the last 2 years. Yeah. That it's been really tough, but we've somehow got to find more and keep pushing into what 23 is gonna bring us. It's the challenges of post pandemic, post Brexit, coming into an energy crisis, cost of living. There's going to be challenges regarding legislative changes when they review all of the EU laws. So that's going to be a massive impact that we have no idea at this stage what that landscape is even going to look like. So the more we can do now to work together and for business owners to take a breath and to really look at their businesses and their workforce planning and look at what does that look like now and what does it need to look like for the future is the best advice I can give them, really. It's take that time to do it.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because if I always one of the promises I'm now using is that, the evolved topics that people are engaging with us to talk about. And if we go back 12 months, it was change management. That's, how do we manage change? That's kind of still there, but it's dropping away. The two topics are developing team performance. How do we really get a high-performing team? And that employee engagement piece. They're the subjects that are at the fore about, forward-thinking business owners thinking, right, I've got to get this right now, so that as the times, if times do get tougher, as everybody expects, we're in a good place. One of the things, obviously, that is happening out there, and it's probably more hard for you to comment on this, but the salary piece, escalating salaries, escalating costs, are views on that and what a business should do? Should it be continuing to uplift salaries? Is that just a race to the bottom? What are your thoughts, Debbie?
I think it's an easy thing to think it's a fix. You've got an employee that says they're off because they've been offered a 10k pay increase somewhere else, and you think I've got no choice but to match that because otherwise I'm going to lose that person. So it is a real issue out there at the moment. But my personal view is, giving somebody a 10k pay rise might fix something right here, right now. But is it just a sticky plaster? Yeah. And actually, what will happen in 6 months' time or 12 months' time? What is really it is about money, but it isn't just about money. Yeah. I think it's really important that employers look at do some market research. Make sure that you are on par with what the market is paying. Don't just make assumptions that actually you're paying really well when they could look at another role somewhere else and
do that benchmarking piece.
Am I valued enough? I'm not really being paid the market rate. And also, it's a good information to have so you can have the right type of conversations. But don't just make things about salary. Make sure you take the time to have the right conversations so that you're sitting down with your employees regularly enough so that a salary conversation doesn't come as a surprise. If somebody comes to you and says, well, I want, 10 grand because I've been looking elsewhere, they've been looking elsewhere for a reason. Yeah. But if you're having regular communication with that individual and understanding their wants and their needs, then you want to get ahead of it. So talk about career progression, talk about, those stages of increases for salary. Look at your benefit packages. Are you offering competitive packages? Yeah. I think the candidate market as it is has made some employers, which is good, take a look at their benefits. Yeah. We see a lot in the media, don't we, about people saying, oh, I offer 28 days holiday and I offer a car park space and I offer a fruit bowl, and wrap it up as benefits when it's illegal 28 days holiday is a legal entitlement. And I understand the challenges employers have about costs. Yeah. But again, review what you're offering, and if 28 days holiday is okay for your employees, then fine. But if you can review that and think about rising incrementally to offer more holiday with service, or look at offering days off for birthdays, or just wrapping things up in a slightly different way. We get lots of clients in the past that have said you have to take 3 days out of your holiday for Christmas because we're closed. We've seen a real shift in that over the last 2 years, where they've removed that and just said, we'll give it to you either as extra or we'll up your entitlement, and then you can still take it. But I think there's a real negative feeling from people where they feel that they're getting less than the statutory. So think about, different ways of benefits. Ask your team what they want. Can you offer a flexible benefit package that is different for different individuals? It takes some thought, and you've got to make sure you've got all the framework behind that set. But also look at other things. Can you organise flu jabs for your staff? That we're coming into a season where flu is going to be, they say worse than ever. Can you organise someone to come in and give that to your staff so they're not worrying about going and getting it, or they're not worried about the cost? I know it's a small cost, but it's still a cost. Some companies are offering store cupboards and essentials where people can just go and help themselves to the odd piece of canned foods, or if they're just struggling a little bit. So I think it's just about trying to think outside the box about how do your employees feel valued, and what makes them want to stay with an employer.
Brilliant.
For me, it's about mutual respect and trust, and making sure that you listen to each other.
Brilliant. Perfect. I mean, when we worked with you, I think one of the best exercises we ever did was, we asked the team what would, what benefits, what package would they like. And actually, there's some surprising results. Some things we did, we hadn't even communicated properly, and not everybody in the team understood that we already gave some of those things. But then we were able to, if you remember, we came up with that 3-year plan. So we went back and we went, right, no, there's some great suggestions here, but we can't do everything today. And we kind of then set the roadmap and followed that roadmap and followed through on it. And that really helped that engagement piece. And it probably took for a while that discussion around pay off the table, because we'd also benchmark, so we weren't going over and above, but we were making sure we were hitting benchmark. And that was some of the stuff that Debbie, you did for us, and I'm always thankful for.
And I think the key thing that you said there as well is about how you communicated it fully back, and we talked about that at the time, didn't we, about people are okay with no, but they want to understand the reason why you're getting a no. So if as an organisation you make decisions but you don't communicate why those decisions are being made, people will make up their own minds. And that's where people breed that discontent. They're unhappy because they decide that you've not done it because you don't care enough about them.
So you've sort of planted the seed yourself, and it grows and grows and grows. Definitely. Any other hints and tips that an employer should be thinking about right now as we start to wrap up our conversation, Debbie? Is there anything that you're seeing that would be helpful to our listeners?
As I said, I think the key is about forward planning and taking the time to understand your workforce and making sure that you just evaluate, your touch points, and, if you are going to look at bringing people back into the office because of cost of, living and energy crisis, then think it through, communicate effectively, and make sure that you are, forward thinking, and surround yourself with the right people, whether that's, getting the right advice from your, accountants, your advisors, whether that's your HR people, whoever it is, mentors, whoever, it's fundamental to make sure you've got people around you that can support you over the next sort of 6 to 12 months.
Brilliant. Thank you. So just turning slightly back to Streetwise now, just as a couple of final questions, where do you think, and where do you hope Streetwise to be in 5 years' time?
I'd like us to continue to grow. I've spent a lot of time in the last year working really closely with Katie and Kim to try and get them to step up and be kind of the leader themselves of Streetwise moving forward, because I want to go on and do new and more exciting things. I'm not saying that Streetwise isn't exciting, because it will always be my passion, but I want that opportunity now to kind of think, well, what am I going to do next 5-10 years? And Katie and Kim are absolutely ready for that next step, for them to build their tribe and their relationships, and to get out there and be the face of Streetwise moving forward.
Brilliant. Fantastic. It sounds like it's one of those watch those space moments.
Definitely.
Right, always end with the same question. You know what's coming, Debbie. So do our listeners. Is your definition of success? How would you define success? What does success mean to you?
I guess for me, success means, weirdly, just being at peace. I've spent so many years fighting and clawing my way to be somebody I'm not, or to trying to achieve something that other people believe I should achieve, and living up to expectations. And actually none of that really matters, because it's about what is success for me. And that I've started to understand in the last 2 years about, success is who I am and what I've become, and the value that I can bring to the people that I work with. So that inner peace for me is vital, and something that I haven't had for many, many years.
Great. Brilliant. What a great definition of success. Debbie, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Streetwise, where can they go?
Well, they can go, obviously on our website, they can find us on Facebook, they can find us on Instagram. Just connect. I mean, obviously I'm on LinkedIn, so just drop me a connection request and we'll get in touch.
Brilliant. Thank you for being a wonderful and a very insightful guest on the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Evolve to Succeed podcast. My hope with every episode is that you've learned something new or heard something that challenged your way of thinking and further motivated you on your path towards becoming a more knowledgeable, informed and inspired individual and business leader. If you enjoyed this episode, then please help us by rating, reviewing and subscribing. We really value your feedback and would love to have you along for future episodes. And please don't forget to learn more about Evolve by going to evolvemembers.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week.